Oh, man, you know what week it is?
What week is it?
Finals week all around the universities here. You know, you probably have some fond memories of prepping for finals. I mean, you know, what was it like for you back in the day during finals week?
Well, you know we're the Harvard of the Midwest, right?
Boy.
You know that the education is at a premium.
Today.
Of course. So,
one of the bad words.
There's one that stands out, though, I will say. We had a class called the Sociology of the Kennedys to the Kardashians. And
he took a Keeping Up with the Kardashians class.
We were watching the Kardashians in the class, and our exam was like 3 questions at the end of the semester. So that was that.
This is the University of Michigan, the school that they say is the Harvard of the Midwest, the school where Michigan fans will look me dead in the face and said, you probably went to Ohio State because you couldn't get into the University of Michigan. And my dude was sitting around here watching the Kardashians and writing a few paragraphs as a final, just understand what he did to make it through that university. I had real classes. I had tough finals. Okay?
Okay.
And so this was miserable time for me. And this is what Michigan's actually going through right now, too, as they're preparing, is they are preparing for the biggest game that they would have ever played in.
Yeah.
Right? Like
yeah.
this is the one. We talked about the magnitude of this CFP specifically. Best team Harbaugh's had. They feel like they got a real shot. They're the 1 seed, the whole deal. And we were trying to break through. And it was stressful, to say the least.
Yeah. There is guys that become ineligible during this time, right?
Yes.
I had some teammates that became ineligible at this time.
Boy, get your work done, fellas.
Stay in school. Stay in school.
Be a good teammate and pass the class. All right, red corner, blue corner, right here on Stadium. So glad that you're here with us. Jake Butt, Michigan Wolverine, took a Kardashians class, Mackey Award winner, 2-time All-American, all the great things.
This is Joshua Perry. He studied quantum physics and has multiple doctorates from Ohio State. He is a graduate.
I studied quantum physics, but I am a consumer scientist, if you didn't know.
You want to kick this thing off?
Yeah, we might as well kick it off. Before we do, make sure follow us on Instagram, red_corner_blue corner. Scan that QR code, submit content, get in the YouTube chat. All the things we tell you to do every day, and you guys have been doing a great job with it.
Well, let's go. Let's start in Columbus today, okay? In your honor. We'll start in Columbus, where 6 juniors with NFL aspirations announced that they will still play in the Cotton Bowl against Mizzou. Here's the list. Denzel Burke, Emeka Egbuka, Tyleik Williams, Donovan Jackson, Jack Sawyer, and Jordan Hancock will all suit up for the Buckeyes at least one more time. JP, out of these guys, who do you think comes back? Who would you want to come back?
I mean, if we could get all of them back, that'd be great, right? Like, I think all these guys could stand to play one more year in college. I think they would benefit in terms of their draft stock. I think it would be a loaded team if they came back. The guys who I believe should come back, as in they are not necessarily ready for the NFL right now. Tyleik Williams, would love to see him come back. Needs more reps. I think he still needs to work on his body a little bit. Has done a great job reshaping that. I think there's another level within him. Jack Sawyer came on toward the end of the year. I thought he played some really good ball toward the end of the year. I'd still like to see one really good, productive year from start to finish from him to cement himself as a true edge rusher in the league. Donovan Jackson was a guy that you and I both talked about as one of the best offensive linemen
right?
in the country.
Yeah.
And he did not play like that all the time. He needs another year. And Jordan Hancock, I think, is a guy who can stand another year. If Denzel Burke left, I'd be fine with that. I think that the floor for him is the second round. He might creep into the first round, depending on how he tests and what people find out about him. I thought he was locked down this year, and he played well early in his career. It's just a sophomore slump that he went through. And then Emeka Egbuka, I told you that I think that he took a step back as a player this year. I also think that NFL teams are going to be clamoring over this guy regardless.
Yeah, and I think with Egbuka specifically, listen, man, that injury is a high ankle sprain, right? That lingers. That is one of those things where you're cleared to play, but you're definitely not 100%. And the nature of his position is you need those ankles to be 100% to create separation. I'm completely with you on this list. I think Tyleik Williams, he flashed. I mean, what another year could do for him in Columbus.
Ridiculous.
Could he play himself into a day 2? Could he play himself into a day 1, right? And then Donovan Jackson, man, he could benefit by coming back to the school because here's the thing is at that position going to the next level, you need some confidence. You need the details. We've seen Donovan Jackson at his best. I think if he commits and says, I'm going to come back to school, but I'm going to treat this as if I were in the NFL, that momentum could be just so beneficial for him. He could play himself into second round, maybe the first round, right? He's got all the potential. It would never surprise me for an Ohio State guy to become a first-round pick. So I completely agree with everything you're saying. I do want to ask you this because I think back to where this conversation started with McCord leaving, a bunch of guys entering the portal.
Yep.
And now we're seeing this is really positive news. What does this say? What do these guys coming back say to you about the kind of culture in Columbus right now?
Yeah, it's been an interesting discussion about culture. And I think it started from the third straight loss to Michigan. And if people want to say that Ohio State has a culture problem in terms of beating Michigan, I'm not going to fight too hard on that because I did hear some things I didn't like, and I think that they could be better in that regard, seeing as they haven't won that football game. But then people started talking about the culture overall, and Ryan Day has lost his team. He's lost the locker room. Ryan Day's program is crumbling. And I think it was the number of entrants that went into the portal the Monday it opened up. People were like, well, you got your starting quarterback in there. You got a former 5-star receiver, a bunch of talented guys. And I told you that day that you had 2 guys that were legit contributors that went into the portal and a bunch of other guys who had been in the program for a couple years, maybe a few years, who wanted to seek opportunities elsewhere, and I think that's fair. Seeing these guys want to come back and at least play one more game tells me, number one, they believe in their coach. They're bought into their coach. Number two, they want to be there for their teammates. They want to go out the right way. They don't want to leave on a loss, specifically a loss on the road to their rival. It also tells me some of these guys might even be considering coming back. And you do not come back, especially in the NIL era, if you are a good player, then you don't believe in your teammates and you don't believe in your coaching. So to see this, I think it's a shift in the locker room of we're going to take back the narrative of what people are saying about our program. I think it's a good thing.
What it tells me is not to believe the extremists on social media. And what it tells me is the truth is somewhere in between. And what it also confirms to me is that, yes, Ohio State has to beat Michigan. Yep. I understand, and it's frustrating and disappointing when you don't. But just because you aren't beating Michigan doesn't mean it's time to have a fire sale in the program either. So that's what it tells me.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they perform in this game. I know a lot of people are looking at that. But the idea that guys want to be there, I think is something that we should all look at. But another prospect who will be playing in a bowl game is Penn State tight end Theo Johnson. Here's James Franklin's take on how his guy is handling this process.
I think Theo and his family know that we are going to do what's best for Theo and be supportive of that. But I also think there's a balance where you can do both. Finish with your teammates, finish what you started, finish the season, and do it the right way.
What are your thoughts, right? You can do both, but also finish the right way. What do you think he means there?
Oh, I know what you're saying, right? We both know what he really means. I mean, hey, man, we play in this game, But if you're going to say you're going to support Theo, and you're going to support his family, that means if Theo did decide to opt out of this bowl game, then that's totally fine. You can do both. That doesn't mean you have to do both. That doesn't mean that if you sit out, you hate your teammates or you don't love the game or anything like that. One thing that gets lost here about like opting out of bowl games is, this is a month of bowl prep, which is effectively a spring ball and a camp, and it beats your body up, and then you play a game, and then you take a week off before you get into training. Theo will start training mid-January. When guys opt out of the bowl games, I think a big reason is you're training for the combine now in mid-December. That month matters. So that's just one small piece of it. But this is the world where coaches have to be careful, because what you communicate to one player is what you communicate to all players, is what you communicate to the public in the future of your program, and no one can fault players for sitting out in today's environment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and you talked about what the preparation time, the difference between prepping for a bowl game, prepping for the combine. When I hear James Franklin say we'll do what's best for Theo and his family, part of that is me reading into this saying, listen, we're not going to beat you up. You're a veteran guy. You're not going to be going through the training camp aspect of this. Maybe we will set aside a little bit of time during practice for you to do some of the combine training type things so you can not miss out on that developmental time. But on game day, we'd like to have you. We'll use you when we need you, but we know there's going to be a couple moments when we need you in there. And I think that should be a part of the approach that these coaches are selling too, is listen, guys, we know what we're up against, and we know what you want to do, and we know you don't want to get hurt, and you want that extra prep time. We can still do a little bit of that, and you can still play in this last game. And I feel I'm reading into it. But I think that might have been what he was selling.
Yeah, I like what you just said too about how you put that into action rather than just say it is as a coach being strategic. It's easy for a coach to say we have to win at all costs, and the cost of doing that is by punishing the bodies of the guys that are trying to go to the next level. It might rub them the wrong way, but if you can be strategic as a coach and say, hey, Theo, or whoever on your team, we know you want to go to the NFL. We know you want to win the game. Our incentives are aligned. We're going to take care of you so you have a great game, but you're prepared to go to the next level. So it's really interesting, and we'll cover this dynamic going forward. So big news out of Madison right now, okay? Madison found Wisconsin picked up a boost with Tyler Van Dyke's commitment on Tuesday. The former Miami quarterback spent 4 years with the Hurricanes, throwing for 54 touchdowns during his time in Coral Gables. JP, that sounds a little familiar. Thoughts on this move?
Feels like a Tanner Mordecai 2.0.
It does.
Right? I mean, you look at TVD's most productive seasons, and it starts to look like the two most productive seasons that Tanner Mordecai had when he was at SMU. High touchdown guy, moderate to the interceptions, but very efficient completion percentage, was able to rack up some yards, right? I think the yards per attempt for either one of these guys is about a yard apart in their best seasons before they transferred into Madison. So for me, I'm looking at this and saying, what can we do differently for a Tyler Van Dyke than what was done for a Tanner Mordecai? And I think that these guys, being the quarterback in that system, it's simple to me. Be efficient. Don't turn the damn ball over.
You're exactly right. First off, this is good for Wisconsin. He's better than the next person, right? But this also doesn't mean, so many people pick Wisconsin to win the West because Tanner Mordecai looks so great. The truth is, those defenses in the Big Ten, they're different than, really, it's the Big Ten and the SEC.
I agree.
Right? And that's the challenge of this. The Big Ten's going to get a lot tougher too, man. It's going to get a lot tougher with those new 4 additions. For me, what needs to happen here is it's not just about the quarterback. It's about the guys around him, right? There was players on Wisconsin's roster this year that said, we need to make sure guys actually want to be here. Having a big name in the quarterback, a big name transfer portal quarterback name doesn't necessarily mean all of a sudden you got all your problems figured out. He's part of the equation, but not all of the equation.
Yeah, and I think year 2 in this new kind of air raid, air run, whatever you want to call it, system is going to be big, because I think that's where you see the biggest steps forward.
Completely agree. Okay, we have more to come, and with that, we will be going bowling with a special guest. Brooke Fletcher is in the house, and she'll give us some insight on the Big Ten bowl games. She's next, here with us on Red Corner, Blue Corner.
are back right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. Jake Butt joining me. I'm Joshua Perry. We got bowl season kicking off next week, so to help us preview some of those games, we got a special guest in here. That's Brooke Fletcher, who's a part of the A-team for Big Ten Network down there on the sidelines with Jake. Also hosts the Clubhouse right here on Stadium. You can catch us on weeknight evenings. And we're going to talk about some of these games. You excited for them?
Yeah, let's break them down.
All right, so let's talk about the first one out there in Sin City. We got Northwestern. They're taking on Utah. Any of you folks thought Northwestern was going to be playing in the bowl game, you are lying to yourselves. But if you have to ask David Braun a question leading into the game, what would it be?
How do you slow down Jaquindon Jackson? He is leading this offense in the rushing attack. Also, how about Bryson Barnes? He has been a threat under center for Utah there. So Northwestern, this defense, they've struggled against the run this year, so it's going to rely heavily on those linebackers and Bryson Gallagher and Alexander Mueller there. What can they do to slow down this Utah offense there? But it has been an incredible run for Northwestern so far this season. So let's see if they can kind of finish this year strong up against a good team like Utah.
Yeah, I think this is one of the more intriguing matchups coming up because I think Utah as a team had a lot of momentum early on, maybe slowed down Northwestern quite the opposite. But if you had to pick a player with the most to prove, Jake, who are you going with?
I'm going to hijack your question, and I'm not going to pick a player.
Oh.
I'm going to pick a coach, and I'm going to pick David Braun right there for the same reasons you just said. First, he's the defensive play caller, and one of the biggest reasons Northwestern has improved this year is their defensive numbers. Now, here's what I do know. Defense numbers tend to look good in the West when you're playing those type of offenses, right? Brooke, you just highlighted some of the playmakers for Utah. This is going to be one of their biggest challenges defensively, and this is David Braun's defense. So I think this is a chance for him to prove himself, finish the season strong. I mean, my goodness, if they can pull this one off, Utah's one tough football team.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about an 8-win season, including the bowl there. If they could pull this off, it'd be huge for them. Now, I want to look at Minnesota. They're going to be without Joe Rossi on the sidelines as their defensive coordinator. They're heading to Detroit, and this is not a knock on Detroit, but probably not the place you want to go for a bowl game. It's a quick lane bowl. They're taking on Bowling Green. A lot of bowls there. If you had to ask one PJ Fleck a question, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. Okay, what do you do with a shorthanded offense? I mean, you were talking about without their defensive coordinator, so they're shorthanded obviously on that side for different reasons there. But Callie McManus, he has been the bright spot for this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They've faced a lot of injuries, but he announced that he's going to be going in the transfer portal. So they also have some other backups that decided that they were going to leave. So I guess that leaves Cole Kramer to be under center. So there's just a lot of questions. This whole organization or this whole program, there's a lot of just questions on what's the direction for them, right? Who's going to be the starters next year? So it's going to be a tough matchup for them.
I mean, Cole Kramer was kind of like the Wildcat quarterback there for a while, too.
Yeah.
Don't know how many passing attempts he has, so it'd be interesting to see what he looks like. Player to prove in this one.
Well, first off, I may say their offense has been shorthanded all season.
It
anyway,
has.
so,
It has.
Okay.
So,
All
there
right,
are a lot
I'm
of
done
questions, but I had to choose one.
Player to watch out for is Tyler Nubin. I know we all agree. I mean, you know, his first game, we were saying this guy's a first-round pick, and he still has that level of talent. But when you look at the tape this year, and I think it's a product of the Minnesota defense as a whole, he's been caught doing too much, caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and that's left his team vulnerable. I want him to put a stamp on this season. I want him to have a phenomenal football game and confirm that he's a first-round pick. Also, Bowling Green has a damn good tight end in Fannin. Good little matchup for him to go execute.
Yeah, I think his biggest issue this year is he's trying to play hero a little bit too much. We know what he is as a player. I think he was just trying to make the plays for a team that certainly needed a boost there, but he has been caught out of position. Then let's look at the Music City Bowl. We'll skip ahead here for you.
Okay.
Your Auburn Tigers are going to be playing the Maryland Terrapins in this one. So let's start with Locksley. If you had to ask Coach Locke's question here, what would you ask?
What are your expectations for Taulia Tagovailoa going up against a pretty solid defense in Auburn this year? Now, yeah, they've given up a lot of yards, but teams have struggled to put points on the board going up against Auburn. Their secondary has been playing really well. We know that Tagovailoa, he loves to throw the ball, but he is susceptible to throwing interceptions and throwing turnovers there. So if Auburn can force those turnovers, I mean, that's going to be a huge win for them. So how do you combat that and get something going on that offense?
All right, I'm going to put you back on the spot here. You get to ask Hugh Freeze a question. The coach of your alma mater. What are you asking him?
I mean, how do you bounce back here, and how can what was the question? Yeah, how can you kind of overcome those inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get flustered when I talk about my
I
Auburn
get
Tigers
it.
here
I'd
because
be
there's been a
flustered
lot
too.
of frustration. But listen, the last game that you guys had, going up against your rival in Alabama there, it came down to the last play. I hate that I even have to talk about it here, but how do you bounce back here and overcome those inconsistencies? So, like I said, it starts with that defense, but you also have Peyton Thorne. He's been playing pretty well there, so this could be an opportunity for Auburn to finish the season strong as they look ahead to next season.
I think you're exactly right, Brooke. To be, which team shows up? Is it Maryland that played Michigan and Ohio State? Is it Auburn that played Alabama and Georgia? Or is it going to be the rest of the schedule?
Yeah, it's a very Jekyll and Hyde for either one of these teams. I think we see the pieces that can stand out, but they don't do it all the time.
No.
And it, to your point, is very frustrating to watch them. Brooke, always appreciate you when you join us over here on Red Corner, Blue Corner, but we are going to take our final break right here. And coming up, transfer portal, let me tell you, it's already been a little bit crazy, but is it about to get even crazier? We'll discuss that after the break. Monday, December 18th, we got a treat for you. We got the U.S. Army Bowl, Black versus Gold, streaming for free here on Stadium. And you know what? One Jake Butt played in that game once upon a time. Let's get the photo up here. Look at Skinny Jake.
First off, I'm wearing 3 hoodies, so I'm even skinnier. This is why Urban Meyer didn't offer me to go to Ohio State, because I was really skinny. You want to know my nickname back then?
Go ahead.
Pencil neck.
No, don't say it was because, well, first off, you got a long neck, so that's part of the issue.
At least it's a little thicker these days.
Don't say it was because you were skinny. Urban wouldn't have offered me either, but my skinny ass made it through that program.
Okay.
You could have made it too. That was one of Urban's biggest mistakes, is letting an All-American Mackey Award-winning tight end from the Columbus suburbs go to Michigan. We don't have to talk about all that because it's time for the conference clash now. We got our guy, T-Bob Hebert, joining us. And we got to talk about what happened today, because a court in West Virginia ruled that the NCAA cannot enforce their transfer waiver rules, which effectively allows athletes to transfer an unlimited number of times without having to sit out a year. Start with Jake. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, man, I don't like it. I can't say I like it. Again, we've said this a bunch of times. I am for player mobility, but I do think there has to be a line. And this seems like complete and utter chaos. You could just transfer. Listen, when I was 18 years old, I thought I knew everything, and I thought I should have all the decisions in the world, and I should answer to no one. I now have the guidance to realize I actually knew nothing, and I needed someone that was smarter than me and further down the path to guide me. I thought I was going to transfer from Michigan early on when I was struggling. And my dad said, no shot, stay the course. I just worry that this can have unintended consequences.
Yeah, I think that all these things kind of have unintended consequences. It would be the Wild West. T-Bob, I want to get your thoughts on this.
I mean, unfortunately, I know in this job we should always have something different to say, and I would love to come on here and be like, yes, bring it on, because I'm with you. Like, I'm always about player empowerment. That's been one of the core things that we've leaned on, where, we've argued for more player mobility, right? If the coaches can leave right before bowl, if they can do this or that and be immediately eligible, like, why can't players? But this maybe does feel a step too far, and so, I mean, look, I feel like players are in a great spot right now. Mm-hmm. You're getting paid off a name, image, and likeness, and there's no real way to cap that, right? Like, you can't cap the advertising money that a person can make. I don't care what I don't know why the NCAA even continue to try to do so, but there's no way to cap that. You can transfer once before graduating. You can transfer once after graduating. Right. So you have mobility there, including earned mobility when you talk about the graduation portion of that equation. And pretty soon here, you're going to get your hands in the TV revenue. Like, make no mistake, that's the fight on the horizon, is players getting money directly from these massive TV contracts. So no, this is just look, there can be too much of a good thing, and this is a bit too it's just a bit too gluttonous for me, for players to be able to transfer every single year.
Yeah, we got Hudson Mason joining us. We'll get his thoughts real quick, because I do want to jump in on this. And Jake, you and I talked about this today, but this is the thing that bothers me about where we're getting right now. Is players in one vein want to say that, no, I'd like to be an employee. I want to be an employee. I want to have all those things, whatever. At the same time, they're like, but I want to be able to move whenever I want to. And we see the employment contracts that exist in the NFL, for example. A team can cut you, but you can't just leave if you want to. You got to fulfill your contract. We see even with coaches, they're like, oh, well, these coaches have so much mobility. The thing we don't talk about a lot is the damages that they have to pay when they leave a job. There is a buyout to leave a job. And it might not be a lot to them or the university who's getting ready to employ them, but I bet you a kid can't pay those types of damages. And so it's just like, we want all of the freedom, but we don't necessarily want the consequences that come along with the freedom that we're asking for. And it's just a really tough spot to be in. Hudson, I know we're getting ready to change over here real quick, but we got to get your thoughts here too on this restraining order saying that guys can just basically get unlimited transfer.
Welcome into Rivals Outside. Go ahead, Hudson. Let us know. What do you think, man? Do you think guys should be able to transfer every single year?
Generally, no. I don't like the transfer rule, and this is coming from a guy who, sat for 4 years primarily at my career at Georgia, and had to wait his turn and was a one-year starter. I'm for player mobility, but it's obviously, I think parameters are a good thing. In this case, in this situation, guys, I keep asking myself, do we have a rule problem or do we have a transfer problem? And I think the answer is we might have a waiver problem. I mean, when you look at the waiver and how these guys apply for a waiver, I think it's complicated, it's convoluted, it's very subjective, it's very inconsistent. Nobody really knows. There's about 12 different ways that a player can apply for a waiver. And I think that's really where a lot of the inconsistency and subjectivity lies.
Well, look, as long as we're getting litigious here in our college football power hour, Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody has announced that she's launching an investigation into the CFP. That's right. Going to get to the bottom of this injustice. Now, I want to be clear. I do think it's an injustice. I think Florida State got screwed. I think it's awful, and I've made my thoughts very clear. No, I think it's a black mark on college football. That said, this feels like political showboating, right? Like Schadenfreude. I know. Look, in the world of partisan politics, just go look at your local state legislature, okay? I'm pretty sure most of us live in states where stuff like this has happened. Go look at how quickly the two sides came together to form school-friendly NIL rules. In the world of partisan politics, there are few things that both sides can unite behind rather than their favorite college football team. And so, yes, Ashley Moody coming out and saying, we're going to investigate the CFP. In my opinion, Joshua, that's just her telling her, just showing her constituents we're trying to do something. I don't know how you could actually accomplish anything when at the end of the day the committee just has to say, no, in our opinion, Alabama was better and more deserving.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what information they're necessarily after. Like, I don't know if they think they're going to find some sort of smoking gun that would lead to this grand conspiracy that left Florida State out. I'm also curious, does the Attorney General of the state of Florida have any jurisdiction to get anybody as a part of that committee to actually cooperate with this thing? And if they did, you know what I would do if I was the committee? I would do this. I would send them every rankings release show from 2014 to present. And I would give them every response to the questions that the reporters end up asking them and be like, hey, man, we got no consistency. We don't know what the hell we're doing. We got zero standards. This ain't a conspiracy. This is just how we operate. Because the system has already been undermined multiple times. I don't know how many people that generally have faith that that room does the right thing all the time. I think people have faith that they can get it right every once in a while. I would just send them that and be like, bro, what you trying to say about us? Everybody knows we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. It's like, if you go around acting stupid, then people never expect you to be smart.
Exactly.
It's actually genius.
I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, man, you cannot say that Alabama was the wrong decision, that this didn't have some type of potential, right? There is certainly a case to be made that Alabama can make the playoff. I may not like it. I may not disagree with it, but you could certainly make the case. And part of that is the way we judge this and get forward, it's vague, right? Like, what is the structure? But maybe it's intentionally vague to allow some fluidity in this. There's really there's no basis to say that, what are we doing? What do you call it? Political showboating? That's exactly what this is.
Nolan Hawley in the chat says, I highly doubt this investigation has any teeth. I agree. What probably does have some is now more than ever, FSU is feeling the pressure to get out of the ACC. I don't want to make this a grant of rights conversation because, again, that's for FSU and their own finances and financial advisors to decide, and their legal counsel as to whether or not they can pull it off. They want to. We know that. Where do y'all think would be a better fit, the Big Ten or the SEC? Hudson, let's start with you.
I think they'd probably be a better fit in the SEC. The first thing that kind of comes to mind is their regional footprint, obviously being kind of in the SEC territory. A lot of their recruiting footprint in the state of Florida with the SEC. But not that necessarily matters anymore, as we've seen teams on the West Coast going to be playing in the ACC with conference realignment. But with Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC as well, I kind of asked myself, do they fit better in the SEC, the Big Ten? You got UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten, but I think the SEC on the surface level would be a good fit for them.
Jake, what about you?
Yeah, no, I think it's the SEC, absolutely. But what I'm more curious about with this is just this is modern college football, because we think, hey, this is college football. No, this is big business. This is big time business.
Yeah.
And we're talking 9 figures or 10 figures, how a move could affect over the next 10, 20 years, right? That's potentially billions of dollars. And when we talk about the grant of rights, like, it's been rumored that, hedge funds may get involved to help push this over the edge. Private equity. People are potentially investing into this, not because they love the purity of college football, but because of the potential potential income you get by being in the right place at the right time, SEC or Big Ten.
Yeah, I think Mark Carmen's comment right there is the reason why I'm leaning toward the SEC. Florida versus Florida State as a conference game be phenomenal. I totally agree with that. Also, love the reference there. Nino Brown, New Jack City. This is big business. I like that.
Here's what I will say, though, is that I think actually that the Big Ten would covet Florida State more than the SEC would. The SEC's already in Florida. I feel you. It makes sense, right? It makes more sense. They're in the footprint. They compete with their neighbors, easier to travel, all of that. But they're already in Florida. The SEC, when you're talking about what you want as a conference, you want to get into new markets. Like, I think if you put UNC and Florida State in front of the SEC, despite the history of the programs, the Southeastern Conference would choose UNC. And with that, I think that's why the Big Ten that suddenly becomes so attractive, because you've already gone out west. Right now, you start your foray into the South, and as we continue to move towards what I think is going to be some sort of super league or two-league super conference sort of deal, like a sub-NFL, you want to be more spread out all over the country. So we'll see. Boys,
Real quick,
yes, anything to add?
If the Big Ten if this were to actually happen, Big Ten Conference, potentially could add Florida State, I think they got to start cutting from the bottom up because it's getting a little bit full. That's the one thing that I see.
The harsh truth.
And I don't know if, because of the way that this conference is built, if they would even consider that, but that's what they should do if they would bring in a Florida State.
Look, I think we can all agree that if we just wanted to create the best product possible in this new age of college football, going to some sort of relegation system would be incredible. Yeah. Where all of a sudden you care about Vanderbilt in the final game of the year. You care about Rutgers. It might be unfair. Rutgers had a pretty good year. Yep. But you get my point, right? You care about these teams because they're fighting for their lives. They're fighting for millions of dollars of revenue. But that's probably the reason why we won't ever get it. All right, Red Corner, Blue Corner. Thank you so much, Joshua Perry and Jake Butt. Y'all have a great day. It's time to talk some SEC here on Rivals Down South in Hudson. Let's start with your Georgia Bulldogs. Carson Beck, the lone remaining domino to fall that could affect the entirety of college football. You see his year here. He had a fantastic first-year plan. Real quick, though, before we get into Beck, there was some other massive dog news as five-star quarterback number 2 commit in the entire country, Dylan Raiola, appears to be flipping from Georgia to Nebraska. And Hudson, it's been pretty fascinating watching Georgia fans go from Dylan Raiola is going to be the most talented quarterback that Georgia's ever had. He's going to be better than Beck. He's going to be better than Stetson Bennett to now, who needs him? He's just Tate Martell 2.0. What's your take on Raiola potentially leaving the Bulldogs in the dust for the Huskers?
Oh, there's so many layers to this conversation, right? So many kind of side pieces that you can have, which is what makes it fun for guys like me and you who do talk radio for a living. On the surface and kind of a bird's eye perspective of this, look, I put myself in the shoes of Dylan Raiola, the recruit. Where is going to give me the best chance to play and play a lot? Nebraska. Which place would give me the best opportunity to compete on the highest stage and win championships? Georgia. But Georgia's loaded, man. I mean, I hate to break it to, Dylan Raiola, but there's 3 or 4 other Dylan Raiolas in line already in Athens, Georgia. And at Nebraska, there's not. And so then you throw in the mix of his family ties, his uncle being the offensive line coach, his dad was a legend there, played football at Nebraska. I see where it makes sense for him to choose Nebraska over Georgia. I understand why Georgia fans may get salty all of a sudden, but here's the thing, and here's what I tell Georgia fans, T-Bob, is that Georgia's not in a place where they are beholden to any singular recruit. Kirby is not dependent on one quarterback, including the number 1 quarterback in the country. Nebraska needs him far more than Georgia does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, and for Raiola, go be a legend, right? Go resuscitate a program. And I think this is good for all of college football. I think everybody wins. Because if you look at Matt Rule year 2, he's always awesome year 2. Matt Rule year 1 in Nebraska, though the results feel very similar, if you looked at the results, they were different. They're just a quarterback away. They were improved in a lot of areas. They just turned it over a billion times. Now you're going to get Kyle McCord, maybe bring in Raiola as well, have backup. Like, if you can resuscitate one of the great traditional powers of college football, one of the winningest programs ever in Nebraska, that's awesome. It makes the Big Ten more fun. It makes everything more fun. And like you said, Georgia's kind of immune to it in a weird way. And do you want to go be a legend that resuscitates the program, or do you want to go be another cog in the wheel of success that currently is the Georgia Bulldogs? Now, I will say this, Hudson. Raiola leaving doesn't matter that much if you have Carson Beck returning next year. I've been operating under the assumption here that Carson Beck was automatically going to return. That's why, though, we mention him being the biggest domino out there in college football, because word on the street is he's not so sure yet. He's still decision-making. The clock is ticking. Do you know the veracity of the reports that he is currently seeking an NIL deal in the range of $4 million?
Yeah, I have no validity to that. My sources haven't told me or given me a specific number. I think Georgia plans on, from what I'm being told, compensating Carson Beck for his performance and doing it with a handsome number. I haven't heard the number $4 million. But look, Matt Rule told us a week ago that a quality quarterback, and Carson Beck is certainly more than just quality. He's one of the best in the country this year. And, he said that goes for about $3 million in the portal. So that number $4 million, based on what Matt Rule said, kind of makes sense. But again, like, even if you're comparing that number, if you're Carson Beck, $4 million to what? If you're a first round draft pick, 12, 15 million guaranteed if you're going to be a middle to late first rounder where he may be projected to go. So, again, I think this all comes down to, does he think, and the feedback does he get, will it be a first round draft pick? If not, I think you come back. I think you should come back.
Well, I think Beck is going to get that first round grade, right? Right, you said in that 10 to 15 range. And interestingly enough, 10 to 15 is going to pay you about $4 million in that first year. If I'm Beck, even if you give me $3 million, I'm likely staying, right? I get to season for another year, and I'm one of those rare talents. And because I play quarterback, I'm not a receiver that has to be beholden to someone. Because I play quarterback, I can rise from 10 to be that number 1 overall pick. Real quick before we go to break, how worried are you, Hudson, if Beck chooses the NFL route and you lose Raiola?
Yeah, I'd be really concerned because now it just becomes a matter, like, your depth is, number one, a problem. Georgia would all of a sudden have to hit the portal really hard. And I know Georgia fans are, want people to know that there's another quarterback coming in this 2024 class, Puglisi from the state of Massachusetts, who's a 4-star quarterback. But you would have Gunnar Stockton and Puglisi. So just 2 quarterbacks. They would have to hit the portal and hit it hard. Brock Vandagriff, the number 2 quarterback this year, just transferred to Kentucky. And the biggest concern, T-Bob, is like, who is out there that you would want to go get? A lot of the names have started to get kind of snatched up in the transfer portal.
Well, one name, maybe a little Arch Manning, if this was all come to pass. We'll see. We'll see. Still to come. Tonight, the SEC is going to be opening up the entirety of the 2024 schedule, but we've already got some insight and teases to break down. And plus, let's look at whose coaches' seats might be a little warm heading into 2024. Keep it locked here on Rivals Down South. Yo, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Rivals Down South. And what does this do for you, man? Alabama tweeting out that come September 28, 2024, Bryant-Denny's going to play host to the Georgia Bulldogs. And it's a little taste of things to come in this 2024 gene of college football and this new age SEC, Hudson, where, remember, regardless of even if you go to 9 games, under these new schedules, within a 4-year period, you will have a home and home with every team in the conference. It is about freaking time. And for your Bulldogs, well, there's going to be no easy schedule complaints next year. As I look, opening up with Clemson in Atlanta, going to Bryant-Denny, as we just alluded to, and then having to go to Texas later in the year as well.
Yeah, pretty brutal, right? I mean, probably gone are the days of 29-game win streaks in a row. I don't know if we're going to see that type of domination anymore in the SEC, the way that it's expanded. Obviously, Clemson and Atlanta starting out, that's brutal. They got a lot of guys returning this year, a lot of young players as well. But then Bama and Texas. And remember, the cool part about the new TV contract is that they can, much like the NFL, announce these games for much further in advance, like they're doing, tonight, and like we're talking about right now. So you can already start to plan and go ahead and get ready for that Bama game. You can start to buy your tickets in your hotel rooms and see Formula One and Georgia play in Austin next year on October 19th. But, the home schedule, what sticks out to me, isn't necessarily great. But the road games for Georgia, if you are a Georgia fan, you got some pretty cool places to go see this year.
And so really the impetus, right? The catalyst for all of this change for and if you look at everybody's schedule right now, like everybody's looks harder. We're going to talk Billy Napier in a second, and Florida may have the hardest schedule in the entire country. But then you look at the rest of the SEC and you're like, oh, well, it's nearly as hard, right? Why is that? Because Texas and Oklahoma, 2 very good top 15 teams, playoff team in Texas, near playoff team in Oklahoma, both are joining the conference. And, well, what it means for those schools specifically is that both of them got their own new schedules to look at. And I don't know, man, it's got to be real tough to be a Sooner fan right now. First off, yes, this was a good year, but after winning Texas, you did not expect to lose to Kansas. You did not expect to lose to Oklahoma State in the last Bedlam, and you did not expect to lose to Big 12. You also did not expect the Texas Longhorns, your arch rival, your most hated enemy, to have such a magical year and now end up winning the Big 12 and go into the college football playoff. And I'm an Oklahoma fan, I'm feeling even more screwed over because if you look at 2024, the Sooners are at Ole Miss. They got Alabama and Texas. They're at LSU. They're at Mizzou. Flip it to the other side of the equation. I mean, yes, Texas challenges himself out of conference, going to Michigan. And, yeah, they play host to Georgia. But otherwise, I mean, what? Arkansas, A&M, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt? That's about as friendly of a schedule as you could get in this new age SEC.
Yeah. Friendly schedule for sure, but one thing they don't have coming back is a starting quarterback, and that's what Texas will have if Quinn Ewers decides, to come back, which we obviously think he will be. Would you rather have the easier schedule or the quarterback coming back? Which one would you rather have?
No. To be clear here, Hudson, that schedule I just read is Texas's schedule. They have the easy schedule, and they have
the quarterback, yes,
and they have Quinn Ewers returning. So Oklahoma not only had to watch their Texas win dissipate this year, Dylan Gabriel's now hit the portal and gone to Oregon, and no Oklahoma fans tell me, well, that's because we have Jackson Arnold who went the 5-star play. That's fine. That's all well and good. But now you have the significantly harder schedule, and you have a new QB working in, and you're losing coaches. Jeff Levy, like Brent Venables is going to be really tested here in year number 3 as a head coach.
Yeah, welcome to the SEC, right? Everybody, it's like Kirby Smart said at the beginning of the year, if you think it's so easy, come play it. And Oklahoma's about to figure out when you lose a quarterback, when you lose a coordinator, much like Georgia and Kirby Smart did, much like, Nick Saban did last year, losing a coordinator and a quarterback. Life isn't as sunshine and rainbows when you throw in the toughness of the SEC on top of all that.
All right, coming up next here on Rivals Down South, let's close the show by warming up here in this winter season. Which coaches could you sit by if you were looking for a little warmth. Coming up next here on Rivals Down South. Welcome back to Rivals Down South, youtube.com/watch stadium. Look, the new year is good time. Big expectations for fan bases, right? Well, as I said, it also brings wintertime, cold, right? Who could you warm up with this holiday season? And to me, heading into 2024, and granted, it's a state that doesn't get that cold, so it makes a lot of sense. There is no seat hotter in the SEC than that of Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. And Hudson, we just talked schedules. How's this? So not only is Billy Napier's crew currently getting decimated by the transfer portal, having Trevor Etienne, many others already leave, but in a must-have-it year number 3, he's being rewarded with potentially the hardest schedule in all of college football, as the Florida Gators will have to play Georgia, Texas, FSU, Ole Miss, and LSU, all teams that are currently in the top 15 in the country.
Yeah, brutal. I feel bad for Billy Napier. I don't see how this ends well for him. I'd go to the SEC West, and I agree with you. Maybe the second hottest seat, Sam Pittman next year. And it's too bad because Sam Pittman, I think, was one of the most likable coaches in the SEC, and probably a reason why their athletic director gave him that 5th year instead of firing him this year. The good thing is the true road games for Arkansas next year aren't nearly as bad as they could be at Oklahoma State, at Auburn, at Mississippi State, at Missouri. The bad news is KJ Jefferson might be leaving. Rocket Sanders has already entered the portal, their star running back, and their linebacker, Chris Paul Jr. standout, is gone as well. So hot seat in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
I just can't. I can't shake the feeling that Sam Pittman hired his interim coach. in Bobby Petrino, right? I think Arkansas wanted to wait a little bit. I think they want that buyout to go down a few million. That's a few more million you can go spend on players later on. Well, only time will tell. And we will tell you what to think again tomorrow here on Rivals Down South, youtube.com/WatchStadium. Thank you so much, Hudson Mason. And we'll be back with more Rivals.